If you get a PSA 10 on a 1984 Topps Tiffany Don Mattingly rookie card, you have a nearly $10,000 card. Here's how to identify the Mattingly and any other 1984 Topps Tiffany card. Let's take a look at the differences between the Tiffany and the Topps base. You can see the Tiffany has more vibrant colors. It also has a gloss coating, but unfortunately you can't really see that from the scan. If you have it in hand, you kind of tilt it at an angle, you can see the gloss coating. Also just feels a little bit different in hand. On the back, the 84 Topps base has that grayish, brownish cardboard. It also says printed in the USA, clearly distinguishing it from the 84 Topps Tiffany. With the Topps Traded though, it's much more difficult since they're on similar white cardstock. There's also no markings on it, including there's no printed in the USA on the back, since Topps Traded wasn't printed here. I'll actually get to that in a minute. Topps Traded has a pinkish color, while the Tiffany has more of a salmon color on the back. Difference in value between the base Topps and the Tiffany is significant. So there's an incentive for unscrupulous sellers. You see it on eBay sometimes. They alter the images of a regular Topps card to make it look like a Tiffany. This is really easier to do with Topps Traded since the stock is so similar, that white cardstock. There's also counterfeits of the Tiffany. Best thing to do is have an example copy of a known authentic common card from the same set to compare it to. This is really true for any card, not just Tiffany. Again, seeing these in hand, you can see and feel that the card is different. So let's take a look at some live 1984 Topps and Topps Tiffany examples. We'll start with the Topps Tiffany. See, with the Tiffany, the colors are more vibrant. You can also see the gloss, even feel the gloss as well. On the back, it's just easier to read in general, bolder colors. Then on the regular Topps, just a standard feel here, no gloss, not as vibrant, and also the brownish, grayish cardboard on the back with the printed in the USA, like we talked about before. So yeah, now that we've taken a look at the cards themselves, let's look at how scarce Topps Tiffany really is. Tiffany sets were produced from 1984 through 1991. The estimated print run for 1984 is 7,000 sets. We don't know the print run for the 84 base Topps, but I've seen online estimates ranging from 500,000 to more than 1 million. It really shows the scarcity of the Tiffany relative to the base cards. We'll actually see that in further detail later when we look at the pop counts of some individual cards. Here's a little background on Topps Tiffany. The Topps Tiffany, Topps Traded, and Topps Traded Tiffany were all printed at Topps's Ireland facility that had specialized machinery and cardstock, whereas the Topps main set was printed in the United States. The Topps Tiffany used this glossy chrome coat stock rather than the standard gray stock used on the base Topps. These sets boxes were labeled Collector's Edition, not Tiffany. Tiffany was a name given by the hobby. So if you have one of these red boxes here pictured, it says 1984 Collector's Edition. Congratulations, you have yourself a Topps Tiffany set. As I said before, beware of counterfeits and altered online images. And this was a hobby pre-order. This was not a retail distribution. These were at hobby dealers. Print run of approximately 7,000 sets on this one. As we said before, it fluctuates year to year. But yeah, that's a little background. Let's move on to some population and pricing data for 4 cards from this set. First up is Don Mattingly. I know Mattingly's not in the Hall of Fame, but he was added near the top of the hobby in the mid to late 80s. Look at the pop difference in PSA 9, 20.1x. Did want to note though that this ratio is calculated using a recent sale, and Tiffany doesn't trade a lot, so this ratio can fluctuate up or down depending on which recent sale you use. So which would you choose, a base PSA 10 or a Tiffany PSA 9? The pop is lower on the Tiffany PSA 9. The price is lower on the Tiffany PSA 9. So why isn't the PSA 9 in the Tiffany more than the PSA 10 base? Well, the market likes PSA 10. Pop is just part of it. Which would you choose? The PSA 9 Tiffany or the PSA 10? Or would you really open up your wallet and purchased a Tiffany PSA 10, which last sold for $9,781. Since Mattingly was a rookie card, his data is a bit different than the next group. I've selected 3 Hall of Famers. I plan to profile them for each year of the Tiffany series. First up is Nolan Ryan. His rookie card was all the way back in 1968. He didn't retire until 1993. So he basically has a huge fan base spanning multiple generations. You can see here the base gem's better than the Tiffany. But of course, with the Tiffany PSA 10, there's only 28 copies. So any changes in the population on that one is going to move the gem rate a lot more than the base Topps. So look at that price gap between the PSA 9 Tiffany, $245, and the PSA 10 base, $1,330. Comment below whether you think the gap between the PSA 9 Tiffany and the PSA 10 base will tighten, or will there always be a gap because PSA 9 Tiffany is 1 grade short and the market always wants that quote-unquote perfect 10. Next up is Rickey Henderson, here looking like he's about to steal another base. Rickey was one of the first players I ever collected, so I'm glad I could include him here. Higher gem rate on the base compared to the Tiffany. Question again, base PSA 10 or the Tiffany PSA 9. We also have the Tiffany PSA 10, last selling for $1,975. Pop 35 on that one. You know, some people, they only want 10s, so they'll go for the regular PSA 10. Others are okay with a lower grade of a scarcer card, like the Tiffany PSA 9. Really all depends on your collecting style. Next up is Cal Ripken. Look at how low that PSA 9 pop is. 122 copies. 14x pop ratio, pretty high there for the base to the Tiffany ratio. Last PSA 10 sale that I could find was all the way back in July 2025 for the Tiffany. Tiffany PSA 10 pop is only 34. These PSA 10 Tiffany's, they sometimes don't surface very often. They get stuck in private collections. Again, which would you choose? The PSA 10, the Tiffany PSA 9, or do you wait for a PSA 10 Tiffany to hit the auction block and pay the premium for the scarcer card in gem mint condition? Leave your thoughts below. So here's a summary table of all 4 cards. Might get a bit more interesting as we continue the series and get more data. But yeah, that's the Topps Tiffany Episode 1, 1984 edition. I hope to continue the series and get the 1985 edition out in a few weeks. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.